The morning sun painted the palace walls gold, but inside everything felt cold and gray. William stood at the tall window of his private study, watching the guards change their shifts below. His hands were pressed against the glass and his breath made small clouds on the surface. He had been standing there for an hour, maybe two. Time seemed to move differently now. Kate was in the garden, he could see her from here. She wore her favorite blue dress, the one he had bought her for their anniversary 3 years ago. She was walking slowly between the rose bushes, touching the flowers gently with her fingertips. Even from this distance, he could tell she was crying. Her shoulders shook slightly and she kept wiping her face with the back of her hand. The doctors had left just an hour ago. Their words still echoed in William's mind like a broken record. 6 months, maybe less. "We're sorry, Your Highness. We've done everything we can." The room had felt like it was spinning when they said it. Kate had gripped his hand so tightly that her nails left marks on his skin. But he didn't mind. He would have let her hold on forever if it could change anything. Nobody else knew yet. The palace staff went about their daily routines, polishing silver and arranging flowers, completely unaware that their world was about to change forever. The secret felt heavy, like carrying a mountain on their shoulders. How do you tell the world that someone they love is dying? How do you find the words for something so impossible? William turned away from the window and looked at his desk. There were papers scattered everywhere, official documents that needed his signature, letters from charities, invitations to events they would never attend together. His fountain pen lay open, its ink slowly drying in the morning air. He had tried to work, tried to pretend everything was normal, but the words on the pages might as well have been written in a foreign language. Kate appeared in the doorway, her blue dress rustling softly as she moved. Her eyes were red from crying, but she was smiling. That brave, beautiful smile that had captured his heart from the very first day they met. She always smiled when things got difficult. It was one of the million things he loved about her. "The roses are blooming beautifully this year," she said, her voice soft and careful. "The pink ones you planted for me are especially lovely." She walked over to him and straightened his tie, a habit she had developed over their years together. Her fingers were gentle and warm against his chest. "Kate," he whispered, and his voice broke on her name. He wanted to say so many things, that he was sorry, that it wasn't fair, that he would trade places with her in a heartbeat. But the words got stuck somewhere between his heart and his throat. She placed her finger against his lips, stopping him from speaking. "We knew this day might come," she said quietly. "The doctors warned us when I had the surgery last year. We've had more time than they thought we would." Her voice was steady, but he could see the fear hiding behind her eyes. Outside, the world continued spinning. Cars drove past the palace gates, tourists took pictures, children played in nearby parks. None of them knew that inside these walls 2 hearts were breaking into 1,000,000 pieces. The sun continued shining, birds continued singing, and life continued moving forward, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing. William pulled Kate close to him, and she buried her face in his chest. They stood there in silence, holding each other as tightly as they could, as if their love alone could stop time and keep this moment forever. Through the window, they could see the guards marching in perfect formation, and somewhere in the distance, Big Ben chimed 10 times, marking another hour that they would never get back. 3 weeks had passed since the doctors delivered their devastating news, and keeping the secret was becoming harder each day. Kate sat in her favorite chair by the fireplace, a thick wool blanket wrapped around her shoulders despite the warm afternoon. The medicine made her feel cold all the time now, even when the sun was shining brightly through the windows. William was across the room, talking quietly on the phone with his private secretary. They were discussing his upcoming trip to Australia, a royal tour that had been planned for months. Kate watched him pace back and forth, his free hand running through his hair the way it always did when he was stressed. She could hear bits of the conversation: postpone, reschedule, family emergency. "No," Kate said suddenly, her voice cutting through the quiet room. William looked up, surprised. He had been so focused on the phone call that he hadn't realized she was listening. "Don't cancel the trip," she continued, standing up slowly and walking toward him. "The people there have been planning for months to see you." William quickly ended the call and set his phone down on the desk. "Kate, I can't leave you now." Not when... He couldn't finish the sentence. Even 3 weeks later, saying the words out loud still felt impossible. Kate took his hands in hers. Her fingers were thinner now, and her wedding ring was looser than it used to be. "This is exactly when you should go," she said firmly. "We can't stop living because of this. The world needs to see that we're still here, still doing our job, still caring about people." But William shook his head. "I won't be on the other side of the world while you're—" Again, the words wouldn't come. How do you say goodbye to someone who isn't gone yet? How do you live normally when nothing feels normal anymore? That evening, they sat together in the palace's private dining room, picking at their dinner. Kate had lost her appetite weeks ago, and William found it hard to eat when she couldn't. The chef had prepared her favorite meal, roasted chicken, with herbs from their garden, but it sat mostly untouched on her plate. "I've been thinking about the children we always wanted," Kate said quietly, breaking the silence that had stretched between them. William's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. They had tried for years, hoping and praying and visiting doctors, but it had never happened. It was one of their secret sorrows, something they rarely talked about even with each other. "I used to imagine what they would look like," she continued, her voice dreamy and sad. "I thought our daughter would have your eyes and my nose, and our son would be tall like you but stubborn like me." She laughed softly, but tears were rolling down her cheeks. William reached across the table and took her hand. "They would have been beautiful," he whispered. "Just like their mother." Outside their window, they could see photographers gathering at the palace gates. Somehow, rumors had started spreading. Nothing official had been announced, but the press had a way of sensing when something was wrong. Camera flashes flickered in the growing darkness like fireflies, and reporters shouted questions that nobody would answer. Kate stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the crowd below. "They know something," she said. "Look at them all." More cars were arriving every few minutes, and the crowd was getting larger and louder. "We'll have to tell them soon," William said, joining her at the window. "The palace can't keep denying the rumors forever." He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned back against his chest. They stood there watching the chaos below, two people in their own private world while the public world swirled around them. Kate turned in his arms and looked up at his face. "When we do tell them," she said, "I want to do it together. I want to stand beside you and show them that we're not afraid." But even as she said the words, William could feel her trembling against him. The grandfather clock in the corner chimed 9 times, and somewhere in the distance they could hear sirens wailing. London was alive and busy and full of people living their normal lives, completely unaware that their beloved princess was fighting the most important battle of her life, and slowly losing. The day they decided to tell the world arrived with gray skies and endless rain. Kate stood before her bedroom mirror, trying to choose what to wear for the most difficult speech of her life. Her reflection looked back at her, thinner than before but still strong, still dignified. She had always believed that how you presented yourself to the world mattered, especially during the hardest moments. William sat on the edge of their bed, watching her try on different dresses. Each one seemed to hang looser than it had just a month ago. Finally, she chose a simple navy blue dress with pearl buttons, the same outfit she had worn to their engagement announcement years ago. It felt right somehow to bookend their public story with the same clothes. "Are you ready for this?" William asked, though they both knew that nobody could ever be ready for something like this. Kate nodded, but her hands were shaking as she tried to fasten her necklace. He stood up and walked behind her, gently taking the clasp and securing it around her neck. His fingers brushed against her skin and she closed her eyes, memorizing the feeling. The palace press room was packed with reporters from around the world. Camera crews had been setting up since dawn, and the energy in the room was electric with anticipation. Everyone knew something big was about to happen, but nobody knew exactly what. Some thought it might be news about a baby. Others wondered if William was abdicating his position. None of them guessed the truth. Kate and William walked into the room hand in hand, and immediately the cameras started flashing. The sound was like popcorn popping, constant and overwhelming. They took their places behind the podium, and for a moment Kate felt dizzy from all the lights and noise. William's hand found hers again, steadying her. "Thank you all for coming," William began, his voice clear and strong despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "Today, Kate and I want to share some personal news with you." The room fell completely silent. Even the camera clicking stopped. Hundreds of people held their breath, waiting. Kate stepped closer to the microphone. They had practiced this speech dozens of times, but now that the moment was here, her carefully prepared words seemed to disappear from her mind. Instead, she spoke from her heart. 6 weeks ago, I received news that no one ever wants to hear, she said, her voice steady but soft. My doctors have told me that I am seriously ill, and that my time with all of you and with my beloved husband is limited. The silence in the room was so complete that you could hear the rain hitting the windows. A reporter in the front row gasped, and several others started crying. Kate continued, I want you to know that William and I are facing this together, with courage and with hope. We ask for your prayers and your privacy as we navigate this difficult journey. William took over then, his arm moving protectively around Kate's waist. My wife is the strongest person I know, he said, his voice thick with emotion. We will spend whatever time we have left together making the most of every single day. We ask that you respect our family's privacy during this time, while also continuing to support the causes and charities that mean so much to us both. The questions came all at once then, reporters shouting over each other, cameras flashing frantically, but Kate and William didn't answer any of them. They simply stood there for a moment, letting the world see them together, strong and united even in the face of the unimaginable. As they left the podium, Kate stumbled slightly, and William caught her arm. It was such a small moment, barely noticeable, but the cameras captured it. Later, that image would be on the front page of every newspaper in the world, the future king supporting his queen when she needed him most. Back in their private rooms, they sat in silence, emotionally drained from sharing their secret with the world. Kate's phone was buzzing constantly with messages from friends and family, but she didn't have the energy to answer them. Instead, she curled up on the sofa with her head in William's lap, and he stroked her hair while they listened to the rain falling against the windows. Outside, the world was already changing. News vans lined the streets around the palace, and people were starting to gather with flowers and cards. Social media was exploding with messages of love and support from millions of people around the globe. The secret was finally out, and there was no going back. The world's response was overwhelming. Within hours of their announcement, the palace gates were covered with flowers, cards, and teddy bears. People flew in from other countries just to leave a message of support. The pile grew so large that the palace staff had to organize volunteers to help collect and read everything. Kate spent her mornings reading as many letters as she could. They came from children who drew pictures of her wearing a crown, from elderly people who remembered her wedding day, from cancer survivors who shared their own stories of hope and fighting. Each letter was like a small piece of love, and she treasured every single one. Listen to this one, Kate said to William one afternoon, holding up a letter written in crayon by a 7-year-old girl named Emma. Dear Princess Kate, my mommy says you are sick. I am sending you my favorite teddy bear to keep you company. His name is Mr. Snuggles, and he is very good at making people feel better. I hope you get well soon. Love, Emma. William smiled, but his eyes were sad. Are you going to write back to her? I'm going to write back to all of them, Kate said firmly. Or as many as I can. She had already written over 100 thank you notes, and her desk was covered with beautiful stationery. Her handwriting was getting shakier as the weeks passed, but she was determined to personally respond to as many people as possible. The doctors had started coming to the palace twice a week now, instead of once. They brought new medicines that made Kate feel tired and sick, but they also brought hope. We're still fighting, Dr. Richards told them during one visit. There are new treatments we can try, experimental options. But Kate could see in his eyes that he was grasping at straws. William had canceled all his official duties to stay close to Kate. The palace staff tried to bring him urgent documents to sign, but he barely looked at them. His world had shrunk down to this one room, this one person, these precious moments that were slipping away too quickly. I want to go to Scotland, Kate announced one morning over breakfast. She had barely touched her toast, but she was drinking tea and seemed more alert than she had been in days. To the cottage where we had our honeymoon. I want to see the lake one more time. William looked worried. Kate, the travel. The doctor said you shouldn't. The doctors say a lot of things, she interrupted gently. But I'm still alive and I still get to make some choices. I want to go home, William. Our real home, not this place with all the rules and protocols. So they went to Scotland. The journey was difficult. Kate had to rest several times and they brought a nurse along just in case. But when they finally arrived at the small stone cottage beside the lake, Kate's face lit up in a way William hadn't seen in months. The cottage was exactly as they had left it after their last visit 2 years ago. The same quilts on the bed, the same books on the shelves, the same view of the mountains reflected in the still water. It felt like stepping back in time to when they were just William and Kate, not the Duke and Duchess, not public figures with responsibilities and obligations. They spent their days sitting by the lake, wrapped in blankets, watching the water and the birds. Kate seemed stronger here, away from the palace and the constant reminders of her illness. She laughed more, ate better, and even convinced William to take a short walk along the shore. "I used to dream about bringing our children here someday," Kate said one evening as they sat watching the sunset paint the sky pink and orange. "I imagined teaching them to skip stones and telling them stories about the old castle on the hill." William pulled her closer to him on the wooden bench they had built together during their honeymoon. "You can still tell those stories," he said, "to me. I want to hear everything you ever imagined, everything you ever dreamed about." And so she did. As the stars came out and the lake grew dark and quiet, Kate told William about all the dreams she had carried in her heart. Dreams of children and grandchildren, of growing old together, of traveling to places they had never seen. Dreams that would never come true now, but dreams that felt beautiful and real when she spoke them out loud. The cottage was completely isolated, with no internet and no phone service. For the first time in weeks, they were truly alone together, away from doctors and reporters and well-meaning staff members. It was just them and the mountains and the endless sky, and for a few perfect days they could almost pretend that time had stopped completely. They returned to London after a week in Scotland, and Kate seemed different. The mountain air and peaceful days had given her a kind of calm acceptance that hadn't been there before. She moved more slowly now, but with purpose, as if she had made peace with something important during those quiet evenings by the lake. The palace felt strange after their time away. The walls seemed too high, the rooms too formal, everything too far from the simple beauty of the cottage. Kate spent most of her time now in the small sitting room that overlooked the garden, where she could watch the seasons changing through the large windows. It was autumn now, and the leaves were turning brilliant shades of red and gold. Kate loved this time of year. She always said it reminded her that endings could be beautiful too. She asked William to help her move her desk to the window so she could write her letters while watching the leaves fall. "I want to write something for you," she told William one afternoon. He was reading in the chair beside her desk, a book about Scottish history that she had bought him years ago. "Something you can read later when I'm not here to tell you these things myself." William's book snapped shut. "Kate, don't talk like that. We still have time," the doctor said. "The doctors are wonderful," Kate interrupted gently, "but they're not magic. And I need to say these things while I still can." She pulled out a fresh piece of paper and her favorite pen, the one with blue ink that he had given her for their first anniversary. She wrote for hours every day after that. Letters to William for different occasions. Their anniversary, his birthday, Christmas morning, the day he would eventually remarry. She wrote letters to the children they never had, imaginary messages full of advice and love and stories about their father. She wrote letters to her friends, to her family, to the charities she had worked with over the years. William tried to pretend he didn't know what she was doing, but sometimes he would catch glimpses of her handwriting and have to leave the room. The reality of what was happening felt more real with each letter she sealed and placed in the growing stack on her desk. The palace staff had become incredibly gentle with both of them. The usual formality had melted away, replaced by genuine care and affection. Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper who had worked there for 30 years, brought Kate homemade soup every day and sat with her while she ate, telling stories about her own grandchildren. "You know," Mrs. Henderson said one afternoon while Kate slowly sipped her soup, "in all my years here, I've never seen two people love each other the way you and His Highness do. It's rare what you have, special," Kate smiled. "I know how lucky I've been," she said. "Not everyone gets to love someone the way I love William, or to be loved like that in return. Even if it's shorter than we planned, it's been perfect." Dr. Richards came for his regular visit that evening, and Kate could tell from his face that the news wasn't good. The latest tests showed that her condition was progressing faster than they had hoped. William gripped her hand tightly as the doctor explained that they might be looking at weeks now instead of months. After the doctor left, they sat in silence for a long time. Outside, they could hear the city continuing its normal rhythm, cars honking, people laughing, life moving forward. It seemed impossible that the world could keep spinning when theirs was about to stop. "I'm not afraid," Kate said suddenly. "I thought I would be, but I'm not. Not of what comes next." She turned to look at William, and her eyes were clear and peaceful. "I'm only afraid of leaving you alone." William felt like he couldn't breathe. "You're not leaving me alone," he whispered. "You'll always be with me. In everything I do, every choice I make, every breath I take. You'll always be there." Kate nodded, tears streaming down her face. "Promise me something," she said. "Promise me you'll keep living. Really living, not just existing. The world needs you, William, and you need to be happy again someday." He promised, though the words felt impossible. How could he promise to be happy in a world without her? How could he promise to keep living when half of his heart was about to stop beating? But he promised anyway because she needed to hear it, and because he loved her more than life itself. The last week came too quickly. Kate had grown much weaker, spending most of her time sleeping in the hospital bed that had been set up in their private sitting room. She wanted to be surrounded by familiar things, their photos, her books, the view of the garden she loved so much. The medical equipment looked strange and cold against the warm personal space they had created together. William barely left her side. He slept in the chair next to her bed, holding her hand even while she dozed. Sometimes she would wake up and find him reading to her, poems by her favorite author or chapters from the mystery novels she enjoyed. His voice was like an anchor, keeping her connected to the world even as everything else began to fade. "Read me the one about the Scottish Highlands," she whispered one afternoon. Her voice so soft he had to lean close to hear her. It was a poem about love lasting beyond death, about souls finding each other across time and space. William's voice broke several times as he read it, but he finished every word. Family and close friends came to say goodbye. Kate's sister Sarah flew in from Australia, and they spent an entire afternoon looking through photo albums and laughing about silly things they had done as children. Kate's parents sat with her for hours, holding her hands and telling her how proud they were of the woman she had become. Prince Charles came too, though he and William had never been particularly close. But seeing his son's pain had broken down whatever walls existed between them. "She's been the best thing that ever happened to this family," he told William quietly while Kate slept. "We're all going to miss her terribly." The letters from the public continued arriving by the thousands. The palace staff had set up a special room just to store them all, and they brought Kate a small selection to read each day. A 90-year-old woman from Wales sent her a hand-knitted shawl. A group of schoolchildren from Kenya sent a painting they had made together. A young mother from Canada wrote about how Kate's charity work had changed her life. "I had no idea," Kate murmured, as she read through the latest batch. "I never knew that anything I did really mattered to people." William wanted to tell her that she had mattered to millions, that she had changed the world just by being herself. But she had fallen asleep again before he could find the words. Dr. Richards came every day now, but there wasn't much left for him to do except make sure Kate was comfortable. The medicines helped with the pain, but they also made her sleep more and more. William treasured the moments when she was awake and alert, when her eyes would focus on his face and she would smile that beautiful smile that had captured his heart so many years ago. "I want to see the garden one more time," Kate said on what turned out to be her last morning. It was a beautiful autumn day, with golden sunshine streaming through the windows and a crisp breeze making the remaining leaves dance on the trees. William carefully helped her into a wheelchair, wrapping her favorite blanket around her shoulders. They went slowly through the palace corridors, past the paintings and tapestries that had witnessed centuries of royal history. The staff they passed bowed respectfully, but their eyes were full of tears. The garden was spectacular. The late roses were still blooming, and the fountain sparkled in the sunlight. They sat together on the bench where they had shared their first kiss as an engaged couple, watching the birds and breathing in the sweet smell of the flowers. "It's perfect," Kate whispered, her head resting against William's shoulder. "Everything is so beautiful. The colors are so bright." She was quiet for a long time, and William thought she might have fallen asleep. Then she spoke again, her voice barely audible. "I can hear the music." "What music?" William asked gently. "The music we danced to at our wedding," she said with a small smile. "Can you hear it too?" William couldn't hear anything except the wind in the trees and the distant sound of London traffic. but he nodded anyway. "Yes," he whispered. "I can hear it." They sat there for 2 hours until Kate became too tired to stay upright any longer. As William wheeled her back inside, she turned to look at the garden one last time. "Thank you," she said softly, "for all of it. For loving me. For taking care of me, for making every day beautiful. Thank you for the most wonderful life I could have imagined." The end came peacefully on a Tuesday evening, just as the sun was setting over London. Kate had been sleeping most of the day, but as the light began to fade outside their window, she opened her eyes and looked directly at William. Her gaze was clear and focused, more alert than she had been in days. "My love," she whispered, and her voice was stronger than it had been all week. William leaned close, taking her hand in both of his. "I need you to know something important. What is it?" he asked, though speaking felt almost impossible through the tightness in his throat. "This isn't goodbye," she said firmly. "Love like ours doesn't end just because one person leaves. I'll be with you in every sunrise, every flower that blooms in our garden, every act of kindness you show to others. You'll feel me there." William nodded, tears streaming down his face. He had been trying to be strong for her, but now that the moment was finally here, he couldn't stop crying. "I love you, Kate. I love you more than anything in this world or any other." "I love you too," she said, and her smile was radiant despite her weakness. "Now come here and hold me." William carefully climbed onto the narrow hospital bed and wrapped his arms around her. Kate nestled against his chest, her head finding the perfect spot where it had rested thousands of times before. They lay there together as the room grew darker, listening to each other breathe. "Tell me about Scotland again," Kate murmured, "about the cottage and the lake." So William told her about the mountains and the water, about the birds they had watched and the stones they had skipped. He told her about their walks along the shore and the stars they had counted together. His voice was soft and rhythmic like a lullaby, and Kate's breathing grew slower and more peaceful with each word. At exactly 7:37 in the evening, Kate took one last deep breath and simply didn't take another. William felt her body relax completely in his arms, and he knew she was gone. The room became incredibly quiet, so quiet he could hear his own heartbeat, so quiet that the silence seemed to echo off the walls. He held her for a long time, maybe an hour, maybe more. He whispered all the things he had been saving up to tell her, all the words of love and gratitude and promise that had been building up in his heart. He told her about their wedding day, about the moment he first knew he loved her, about all the dreams they had shared. He promised to keep living, to honor her memory, to make their love story one that would inspire others long after they were both gone. When the palace staff finally came to check on them, they found William still holding Kate, both of them peaceful in the golden lamplight. The scene was so tender and intimate that even the doctor who came to make the official pronouncement felt like he was intruding on something sacred. Within hours, the news had spread around the world. In London, people gathered outside the palace gates with candles and flowers, creating an impromptu memorial that stretched for blocks in every direction. The same thing happened in cities across the globe: New York, Paris, Sydney, Tokyo. Millions of people who had never met Kate but had loved her from afar came together to mourn and to celebrate her life. The funeral was held a week later in Westminster Abbey, the same place where Kate and William had promised to love each other forever. The service was attended by royalty and world leaders, but also by ordinary people whose lives Kate had touched through her charity work. The choir sang her favorite hymns, and William gave a eulogy that left not a single dry eye in the ancient cathedral. But the moment that the world would never forget happened just before the service began. As William walked behind Kate's coffin, his face composed and dignified despite his obvious grief, he suddenly stopped. For just a moment he looked up at the soaring ceiling of the abbey, and his lips moved silently. Those who were close enough to read lips later said he had whispered, "I love you too." And in that moment, everyone watching felt the power of their love story, a love so deep and true that not even death could silence it. The world fell silent, but their love spoke louder than any words ever could, echoing through hearts around the globe and promising that some things really do last forever.